The village of Gorkovsky is under the control of Russian volunteers. The settlement is located in Graivoronsky district of Belgrade region, near the Russian-Ukrainian border. According to the latest data, about 450 people lived in the settlement. Together with Chechen servicemen fighting on the side of Ukraine, Russian volunteers took control of the settlement on March 17th. They reported about it on social media and made fun of Russian propagandists.
Excellent cooperation between Russian Liberation Forces and Ичкериan volunteers. Postscriptum, especially for Putin's propagandists, we briefly describe, by order of the curators from the West on the money of their taxpayers. They built a village in Chernobyl, which is exactly similar to the village of Gorkovsky in Belgorod region, from the message of the Freedom of Russia Legion on Telegram.
Russian volunteer units began their new mission on the territory of Russia on the night of March 12. Since then, fighting continues in Kursk and Belgrade regions, despite the fact that volunteers of the Freedom of Russia Legion, the Russian Volunteer Corps, and the Siberian Battalion warned citizens about the upcoming shelling of military facilities in villages and unilaterally cease fire to allow citizens to leave. The local authorities do not carry out evacuations and even prevent them. Meanwhile, the army of the Russian Defense Ministry is destroying residential buildings in an attempt to displace the volunteers.
The Russian army is hitting its own territory very hard. Kozinka has been virtually wiped off the face of the earth by Russian bombardments. The Russian army has absolutely no regard for civilian casualties. Just as they destroyed residential areas in Ukraine, so they are now behaving in the territory controlled, at least formally for now, by Vladimir Putin.
There is a reason why the raid of the Russian volunteers is taking place during the so-called presidential elections in Russia. One of the stated goals of the operation is to make the pseudo-elections in 2024 the last for Putin. The volunteers themselves ironically say that they have come to vote. Meanwhile, the Regional Election Commission assures that the turnout in the Belgrade region was allegedly almost 80%.
Half the organizations don't work at all, but the polling stations are open. Go and vote. And what should I go and vote for? For the fact that people die in our country every day? Is that what I should go and vote for? Intercepted call from the Telegram channel of the Freedom of Russia Legion.
The raid by volunteers proves that the armed resistance to Moscow regime is possible, and it is the only potentially effective option for Russians. That is why servicemen from the Freedom of Russia Legion, the Russian Volunteer Corps, and Siberian Battalion are calling on fellow citizens to join the armed formations and support them financially. To coordinate efforts, including fundraising, Russian volunteers have signed a memorandum with Russian politicians in exile.
This is about financing our unions, Russian volunteers, also about media support, so that people who are on the territory of the Russian Federation, people who have traveled outside of it since the beginning of the full-scale war, understand that they have several ways to support Russian unions, not only to stand up with arms in their hands in the ranks of the Siberian Battalion, Freedom of Russia Legion and the Russian Volunteer Corps, but also to help us financially.
The Russian volunteers have not yet decided when to end the military operation on the territory of Belgrade and Kursk regions, or whether to end it at all. They claim that they have still plenty of surprises in store for Moscow. Reported by Anastasia Tarnavska, Valeriana Kapelova, UATV News.